Gorgeous. I figured, hope that would be so it's a good you've seen. No, I'm. Oh, that's my here. Is there a question?
You waiting for Buck?
Yes, he's the chairman. Yes, I've been to one of these a long time. Oh, interesting brown area. So I can add to my public comment tomorrow. It's kind of a hodgepodge tomorrow of like just random items.
We will call this the Executive Committee for the Stancog Board to order for Monday, December 8th. Roll call, please.
Chair Condit. Member Chiesa,
Here.
Vice Chair Carr,
Here.
Member Swallen,
Here.
Member Hernandez. Vice Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We will go into public comment. Members of the audience or the public may address the committee on any item not on the agenda. Comment shall be limited to 5 minutes unless the chair of the committee sets a different limit. Do we have anybody from the audience that would like to make a comment? Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, committee members, staff, and community members. Milt Treeweiler, I'm a lifetime Stanislaus County resident. The title of my presentation is The Greatest Challenge for Stanislaus County in the 21st Century. We learn from the past, we live in the present, and we plan for the future. I'm speaking today to make you aware that Stanislaus County has something that's not found anyplace else on earth. The farmland in the central part of our county is irreplaceable. We have the prime farmland soils, we have the irrigation water, and we have the Turlock, Modesto irrigation districts. We have the climate. We can grow fruit and nut tree crops that are not found anywhere else on earth. To my fellow community members and the good, thoughtful people of Stanislaus County, it is our responsibility to see that this farmland is saved and preserved. Agriculture is our #1 industry in Stanislaus County. Now is the time to do what must be done for our Stanislaus County farmland can be saved forever. We must be good stewards for our children and descendants, since they cannot plan for themselves. They can't plan for themselves because they're too young or they haven't even been born yet. There's not 1 acre of farmland in some entire states and even countries as good as the farmland we have here. There is an abundance of poor soils and wastelands in California and our nation for the developers to build houses on, and warehouses on, and industry on. We're educated adults, and we have an intellect, and we have choices, and yet a few thoughtless people are choosing not to conserve the priceless resources we have. We do not want to use up the farmland that will be needed for our children and future generations. Our farmland areas in the MID and TID irrigation districts are already fully economically developed. They're producing food for our state and our nation. This farmland can produce food for our children and future generations for hundreds of years. Now is the time to shut this senseless growth down. We know that creating a food desert in Stanislaus County would be a terrible idea. The future for our children and descendants is our responsibility. We are intelligent and educated adults, and we know that irreplaceable farmland must be saved. We must stop all growth on the farmland in the MID and TID irrigation districts today. The TID and MID irrigation districts in Stanislaus County, we must build up on the infill and blighted areas of our cities and townships. We need to build an abundance of high-rise, luxury, and affordable apartment complexes, townhouses, and condominiums to save this farmland for our children and our descendants. I know we can do this. You know we can do this. And now it's time to do it. We can't wait. We are the adults. We are the parents, and we're the ones responsible for our children and our descendants. We don't get a second chance. We've got to do it now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Any other members of the public that would like to make comments at this time? Do we have anybody online that would like to come? Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to consent calendar. Are there any items of the consent calendar that the policy board would like to pull? Hearing none. Are there any items on the consent calendar that the public would like to comment on? Okay, do we have anybody online? Thank you. At this time, I will accept a motion to approve the consent calendar as is.
Motion to approve consent calendar.
Second, I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Okay, discussion items. Item 5A. Subject is the Ralph M. Brown Act update under Senate Bill SB 707. Ms. Monica.
Good afternoon, members of the Executive Committee. I'm going to be presenting this item, and this is an update on changes to the Brown Act as a result of Senate Bill 707. This is intended to be a higher level overview and not a comprehensive update or overview of all of the revisions that are made to the Brown Act by way of Senate Bill 707. And I'm also going to focus on the items which particularly pertain to StanCog. So SB 707 becomes effective by January 1st, 2026. There are some provisions. There's a creation of a new eligible legislative body requirement. This is not applicable to StanCog, but the provisions that are identified there take effect July 1st, 2026. Next slide, please. There are 5 main categories as that we can identify for the revisions to the Brown Act made by 707. Traditional teleconferencing, alternative rules, new categories, new obligations, and other changes. And I'll address each one of these in turn. The traditional teleconferencing rules are what we're used to from pre-COVID. If somebody wanted to participate remotely, back in those days, it was primarily by way of a telephone call, a teleconference, as opposed to an audiovisual means. But it requires that each remote location be identified on the agenda at each remote location, and those locations be accessible to the public. Now, this SB 707 is attempting to bring the Brown Act more in compliance with technology available. So again, it's both audio and visual means, and then the disclosure of anyone else in the room who's over the age of 18 and what the nature of that relationship might be. So if you're college-age kids or something are visiting from college and they're in the room, then that would need to be identified on the record, and then all votes taken by roll call. And so I'll just pause after I go over each item and see if anyone has any questions before I move on. Okay, next slide, please. Oh,
I do have a question about that. So when it refers to each remote location identified on the agenda, does that mean as far as where the meeting is taking place?
so that's
Or if a policy board member would be attending remotely, they would need to post, even though they're just doing it by teleconferencing?
So if a member of the board, any legislative body that's subject to the Brown Act, so the executive committee, the policy board, if any member of the board were going to be participating remotely and they were going to be using these particular provisions of the Brown Act, that location where the policy board member is located would have to be identified on the agenda. There are other ways to participate remotely that are identified in 707, but for this purpose, this one is the most stringent, but it also provides the most protection for purposes under the Brown Act.
Right.
So yes, any location that you are participating from remotely,
Mhm.
even if it were your home, for
Right,
example.
which is the way it was prior, pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID, these were
Yes.
the pre-COVID rules.
Gotcha.
correct.
Thank you.
I have one more question. On 1C, where it says remote members must disclose whether any individual of the 18 are present. Is that only voting members? Would that
Vice Chair
include
Carr?
members of the public?
So these provisions that I'm going over are applicable to the members of the body. So this would not apply to members of the public. This is for any of the elected officials or appointed officials who are sitting either on, and when we're talking about StanCog, I'm just executive committee or policy board.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. So alternative teleconferencing, these are what we came to know as AB 361, which at the start of COVID, and AB 2449, which came about a year into COVID, which provided more flexible means to participate remotely in meetings. What they've done is they've expanded the definition of just cause. Previously, it had included things like taking care of your children. If you were sick, you had something that would prevent you from attending in person, a family medical emergency. It has now been extended to military service. So if you are away from the jurisdiction due to the military service, it could be National Guard, something like that, then you have the ability to participate remotely without identifying your location under these new provisions. When we prepare the minutes for that meeting, we do have an obligation now to identify which provision of the Brown Act the member relied on for purposes of that meeting. And so we'll be addressing that. And because StanCog meets only one time per month, a member has the ability to use this up to 2 times per calendar year. Next slide. So the SB 707 created new categories of bodies under the Brown Act, and these are the ones that are most applicable to StanCog. There are these new bodies referred to as eligible multi-jurisdictional bodies and eligible subsidiary bodies. So multi-jurisdictional bodies, as the name implies, refers to representatives from more than one county, city, special district, or a joint powers agency. StanCog is a joint powers entity made up of members all of the cities within the county as well as the county. So these provisions are applicable to us. And then eligible subsidiary bodies are our advisory committees for StanCog. And it's only applicable to advisory committees that are not authorized to take final action on certain enumerated things. And those are on the screen, but the ones that are most applicable to StanCog would be the body cannot take final action on grants or allocation of funds. And none of the advisory committees within StanCog have the final action authority granted to them. Next slide, please. So eligible subsidiary bodies can conduct teleconference meetings if all of these items on the screen are identified. We have to identify at least one physical meeting location with at least one staff member present. Historically, that has been this policy boardroom. Agendas are posted at the physical location, but not the remote location. Members, again, have to appear on camera, and this is a new thing, except if the member has a disability that results in a need to participate off camera, or the member has internet connectivity issues and the member announces this reason prior to turning off the camera. This is a new provision. It codifies an Attorney General opinion from 2024 that says if you have a disability, you still have the ability to participate remotely without complying with these provisions. And so SB 707 made sure that that was encompassed in these provisions. If you are an elected official who's serving as a member of a subsidiary body, so an advisory committee, and you're doing so in your official capacity, you're not able to use these remote participation requirements. You have to use the traditional Brown Act teleconference rules. And we do have an example of that here at StanCog, our VBS committee. We have a member of the policy board who sits on that committee. So that individual, if they were to do remote participation, it would be the traditional Brown Act rules. And in order for the body, not only does the body have to do all these things to have the remote participation, the policy board also has to adopt a resolution and make findings prior to allow the legislative body to do that. So next slide, please. And then on the screen are the findings that the policy board has to make. They have to consider the circumstances, identify meetings would enhance public access, promote the attraction, retention, and diversity of eligible subsidiary members. And then the subsidiary body still has to have the ability to make recommendations and present those directly to the policy board. Next slide, please. So then this is specifically as it pertains to the policy board. The policy board can also conduct meetings using teleconference if it does these certain things. Again, it has to adopt a resolution authorizing these things, and a quorum of the members has to participate from one or more physical locations that are open to the public and within the agency boundaries. And so that would be within the boundaries of Stanislaus County. And a member of the policy board can participate if they do the things listed in the second set of bullets there. We have to identify on the agenda each member that plans to participate remotely. So we would need to know from the members a week in advance so we could publish the agenda. You have to participate using both audio and visual means. The remote location has to be more than 20 miles each way from any physical location. So now they're adding this geographical component. And the remote participation is again limited to 2 meetings per year, and that's calendar year, since the policy board meets 1 time per month or less. So are there any questions on those provisions? It's a lot. Generally, this is the physical location, yes, but we could do other physical locations. 1010 10th Street, for example, we could do that. Next slide, please. The other category that was created is this eligible legislative bodies, and there are significant new requirements that are placed on this category, including translation requirements and accessibility requirements on websites. The eligible legislative body characterization does not apply to StanCog, but that doesn't mean that it may not apply to our members' jurisdictions. It applies primarily to city councils and county board of supervisors with populations of 30,000 or more, as well as large special districts that have 1,000 or more full-time equivalent employees. So again, these are not applicable to StanCog, so I'm not going to address those. Next slide, please. And then lastly, some other changes. This was an attempt by the legislature to bring the Brown Act up to date with modern technology. So again, members of the legislative body can use social media. This is the first time that social media has been specifically identified for public engagement, providing a majority of the body doesn't use it to discuss agency business. So this is addressing the serial meeting component, so that now there are guidelines and rules for social media and how it pertains to elected officials. And then we are all now also required to provide a copy of the Brown Act to every person on our members of the legislative body starting January 1st. So come the new year, you can expect to receive a packet with that information available for you. And with that, that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from the policy board? Okay, hearing none. Do we have anybody from the public who would like to speak on this item?
I want to thank you very much for that presentation. Again, Milt Treeweiler, lifetime Stanislaus County citizen, member, resident. That is so important. What I'm finding after COVID, everyone forgot about what public participation was. They're not going to meetings. I mean, you're lucky at the end of a meeting if you have 2 people in the audience, even if you have a city of the size of Modesto or Turlock left at the meetings. So we're not getting any public input into what's going on, and that's dangerous in a democracy. When you have freedom and liberties, that's a dangerous thing to do because you have to hear from the citizens. And so it is so important that we have this, and bringing us into a new technological era is fine. I love that. And I hope that everyone embraces this and it becomes very good so that we get more public participation, more community members here. And it's not just a few people making decisions for an entire county or city. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Do we have anybody else from the public that would like to speak on this item? Okay, hearing none. Do we have anybody online? Thank you very much. This was a discussion item, so there will be no motion needed. Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 5B.
George, I did want to make one comment regarding that item.
Okay, go
I
ahead.
usually do comments after public comment. So, I think this really illustrates how nuanced requirements are for those of us that sit on these boards and city councils and being mayor, whatever the situation is. And how I really just want to say how much it's appreciated with staff that helps us keep track of this, to make sure that we are abiding by the law and that we do meet all the attendance requirements and that we do, this requires so much from staff. I think that's what I want to bring attention to, is that if we are participating remotely, very often, say for the city of Modesto, staff has to plan ahead, make arrangements with the hotel that the person is staying at, or arrange to have a room reserved, have the technology all set up, that we really do go to great lengths to make sure that we are meeting these requirements, and we will continue to do so. But I think this is really a significant report because it illustrates just how much is required in order to abide by these laws. And we all do our very best, and I think that everyone has complied with the law, but there's even more now. And it will be, I mean, like as of today, people cannot comment on Zoom. Is that correct at this meeting? But after January 1st, they will be able to. I mean, at least with the city council, we get the written email comments ahead of time, and I do my best to read them and all of that. But as of January 1st, people will, from the public, be able to comment on Zoom. And maybe at this meeting, they already can, and it's just the city we do not.
So since COVID, StanCog has allowed members of the public to have two options, to either submit their written comments in advance of the meeting, and then those are provided to the members of the body, or to participate online by way of Zoom and provide their comments that way. We have allowed both options, and that's
Yes.
continue.
For StanCog. Now, thank you for that reminder. So it's different for various jurisdictions, but as of January 1st, it will be more standard, I'm sure, because of these laws. But I just want to express that appreciation for any help that staff can give us in making sure that we abide by these correctly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from the policy board? Thank you very much. Moving on to 5B, professional services agreement for grant writing. Mr. Jose Caceres.
Yes, good afternoon. Jose Luis Caceres, your Director of Programming and Program Delivery. Next slide, please. The recommendation before this executive committee is to recommend that the policy board pass a resolution to, to authorize our executive director to negotiate and execute a professional service agreement with Mark Thomas and Company. And that's an amount not to exceed $150,000. However, there is a provision for a situation where it could increase up to $200,000. Next slide. So the background here is at StanCog, we are tasked with delivering two of the region's largest projects, the State Route 99-132 interchange. The cost is $256 million to construct that project, and we're going to need a lot of other funding sources besides our Measure L. Gates of Dakota, which is currently fully funded, but that doesn't mean we stop pursuing funding sources for it. The more funding we can get for Dakota to Gates, the more we can free up our Measure L funds for the interchange. So we have some grant writing to do. Next slide. The scope of work for this grant writing is what you'd be used to seeing: technical analysis, identifying funding sources, filling out those grants, and the cost benefit analysis, which is significant, having that technical expertise as well. Next slide. We began this procurement process in October, completed it a little bit before Thanksgiving, received 9 proposals. The highest ranking one was Mark Thomas and Company. That might sound like a familiar name because we actually have a consulting contract with Mark Thomas and Company for grant writing. That contract and that work led to the successful grant application of $67 million in Trade Corridor Enhancement Program funds from the California Transportation Commission. Mark Thomas has been writing grants for us for the last year. We've already spent all of the money in that contract. That's why we had to rebid or to issue this request for proposals. Next slide. There is a funding change. The grant up until now has been funded from the 1% that is of Measure L that the board voted should be for outreach and marketing, and specifically also allowed it to be used for grant writing. We're changing that to instead be billing the Measure L that's been set aside for State Route 132 West in the Measure L regional projects. And that's how we're proposing to fund this contract. Next slide. And any questions?
Thank you very much for the presentation. Are there any questions or comments from the policy board? Are there comments or questions? Hearing none. At this time, I'll open it up. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment on this item? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Ron McMurtry here. I just have a question. I'm just educating myself here. So the policy board will be authorizing 150,000 and you have the option for 200,000. So does that mean, Director Caceres, that you have to if that happens or you exceed the 150,000, you still have to have a vote and a presentation to the policy board?
That is correct. The professional service agreement and the bid the way we advertise the call for projects or the call for bids says that we would need to come back before the policy board for any increase to the 150 up to 200,000. It would only be under certain circumstances.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the public who'd like to comment on this item? Hearing none, do we have anybody online? Okay, thank you very much. Then at this point, I will accept a motion for the professional services agreement for grant writing.
I'll make a motion to recommend the policy board accept a resolution authorizing the executive director to negotiate and execute a professional services agreement for grant writing.
Thank you very much. I'll second that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Motion passes. Thank you. 5C, professional services agreement for accountant services. Ms. Kate Miller.
Thank you very much. This would recommend to the policy board to adopt a resolution authorizing us to enter into an agreement with Brown Armstrong for accountant services. This is primarily needed because there has been a significant staffing changes as well as a couple of challenges associated with prior year closeout and fund disaggregation. The Brown Armstrong Certified Public Accountants has years of experience, multiple clients in transportation and RTPA and COGS so they have a familiarity with our fund sources. And this will allow us to make sure that our closeout over the last 2 years is well done, and that they, during the course of that, will also help us with our policies and procedures moving forward. I didn't point out that this will actually be funded through our general fund, and the amount of the proposal was $89,419, and I'm recommending that the policy board approve an additional contingency of $13,500 for a total of $102,919. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from the policy board?
I have a question. I noticed in the previous item, we did an RFP and there was 9 groups that responded. This one, I didn't see that. So I wondered what our policy is in this agency for requesting.
I'm not going to be able to quote it verbatim, but it basically had to do with expertise in a particular area, and I think Brown Armstrong qualifies for that. There aren't a whole lot of firms around that are not already, wouldn't be conflicted out as well, because there are auditors for fund sources here or with our jurisdictions, and Brown Armstrong is not providing services to any of those.
So we have the option of just choosing
That's
one
right.
without sending it out for.
Yes.
request for
Yeah,
proposal.
I mean, I reviewed the sole source policy, and I felt pretty comfortable that it met those requirements.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from policy? Thank you very much. Do we have anybody from the audience that would like to comment on this item? Okay, hearing none, nobody online. Thank you very much. Then I will accept a motion to approve professional services agreement for accountant services.
So moved.
I'll second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Okay, item 5D. This is a draft copy of the upcoming policy board meeting agenda, which is going to be Wednesday, December 10th at 6 p.m. Are there any items that the policy board would like to question or
Well, I noticed it's been changed. I don't know if this is something that we vote on or not, or if it's necessary to vote, because we already have the agenda as published and it's different than this is. So I wasn't sure if there's any point on voting on it as is or,
I
Or-
believe this is just an informational item at this time.
okay, yeah, I don't have any questions.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Are there any items that the public would like to comment on? Okay, hearing none. Anybody online? Okay, this was a informational item only, so with that, we will move on to interim executive director report.
Thank you very much. The Environmental Protection Agency sent a letter to the California Air Resources Board that will allow us to move forward with new air quality conformity models that are needed to inform the regional transportation program and sustainable communities strategy and adopt a new plan. Currently, our models are not consistent with federal standards, which has prevented agencies moving forward with new plans and adding non-exempt projects into the Transportation Improvement Program. However, last week, the DOT announced that they are preparing a new rulemaking that will alter CAFE standards. So any new air quality conformity model to meet the standards of the EPA letter will once again need to be updated to address the new CAFE standards. And that's if, we don't know exactly what it says. There was some outline around reducing the miles per gallon requirements and a few other things. But until they release the proposed rulemaking, we won't know exactly what it says. Let's see. But if it passes, we may not have time to develop a new air quality conformity model by the time our existing RTP expires. The current plan is a 4-year plan adopted in 2022. That gap could prevent us from adopting a new plan, resulting in new projects from moving forward. So 2026 is when we're supposed to adopt a new RTP SCS. A federal update, real quickly. I guess I should have included that in the federal update. It is a federal update. But the US DOT released notice of funding availability for the BUILD program, also known as Better Utilizing Investments to Leverage Development. The deadline for submitting applications is February 24th. Maximum capital is $25 million and minimum for rural areas is $1 million, $5 million for urban areas. StanCog will be applying for $25 million for the West State Route 13299 interchange project. Congress is working on the Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development, otherwise known as the THUD bill, which frames the annual appropriations for transportation and housing. We are not likely to see a funding bill until after the new year. The current minibus continuing resolution expires on January 30th, 2026. On the state side, you probably heard, but the Department of Finance is estimating an $18 billion budget deficit. This is for the 26-27 fiscal year. This is the 4th consecutive year of budget deficits, and the Department of Finance underscored the reasons as federal uncertainty, market volatility, and growth in costs and caseload from major state programs, and that's largely because of cuts from the federal government. And the growing unemployment, higher inflation is causing some imbalances in the economy. Staff has requested Caltrans to provide, this is a separate one now, staff has requested Caltrans to provide their costs and terms to advertise, award, and administer what we refer to as AAA, the West State Route 132 project. Staff will bring a formal request to the policy board to proceed once the terms of the cooperative agreement have been completed. Staff recognizes that the prior approach was to AAA the project in-house, but StanCog staffing and structure does not currently support moving in that direction, and we'll have a larger conversation about that, but I just wanted to give you a heads up. And then finally, I'd like to just brief you on several changes at StanCog that have been made in the past month intended to improve the operations of the agency. Measure L oversight will be consolidated in the programming section under Jose Luis, and programming staff will continue to coordinate with finance on revenues and expenses, but programming will have the primary responsibility to oversee compliance and develop new processes. That's right, it's just a report. And so that's one element. And then we posted an internal promotion in the office that would consolidate all the human resource, civil rights, and board and committee secretary leadership responsibilities under one manager. We have some applicants, and we will be reviewing those applicants and identify the successful candidate. Again, it's just an internal, no new staff. Naisha Banks has been moved to the finance department. She'll be responsible for procurement and contracts administration. In that capacity, Naisha will be directed by the finance manager and coordinate with general counsel. She is currently consolidating contracts in one place. She's also taking courses, and we are collectively creating processes to ensure we are in compliance with federal and state funding requirements and government code. Excuse me. And then finally, project documents are also being consolidated and organized on the drive in one location so that we all have access to that information as well. And that concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any questions from the policy board?
Was the consolidation, or so that everyone has access to the same information that's fixing a shortcoming in the grand jury? Or what is?
No,
No?
this is more about making sure that we have historical records on our projects and our contracts. They seem to be stored and online. They're available to all of us. It's just easier if we put them in one place so we know where to find them. Currently, I think right now, most of the project management stuff is with the person who's overseeing the project. Same thing with contracts. This will also allow us to make sure that we are not spending money against contracts that are expired, and just having one person really oversee and manage that, I think is going to be very helpful for the agency.
And what did you call that? What was being consolidated?
Well, project documents.
Okay, there you go.
Project documents, and then contracts.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then my other question was, you mentioned that under the build program that $25 million was being applied for, and what was that for?
It's for the State Route 132 West project.
Oh, okay. I thought you said some specific overpass or.
No, I'm still becoming familiar with that
Okay.
project because it's in different phases and there's
Got it.
multiple projects within one heading. So, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And
Thank
again,
you.
just to reiterate what Jose Luis said, it's, to help us preserve Measure L funds for the other projects on the list because we don't have enough to fund the entire expenditure plan. And I don't think we ever intended to have enough money, but we're doing the best we can to preserve those funds.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the policy board? Hearing none. Okay, with that, we are going to move on to member reports. Do we have any readouts from the policy board? Okay, thank you very much. Our next scheduled meeting is Monday, January 12th, 2026 at 12 p.m. in this room. And with that, we are adjourned.